The last lesson we had was on rational exponents, but all those rational exponents were positive. Today we're going to do some negative rational exponents. But let's first review what a rational exponent is. If I give you 32 raised to the 1/5 power, remember the denominator is a root. So that means I'm literally taking the 5th root of 32. The 1 on top, we could say it's raised to the 1 power, but that's not going to change anything, the 1 power. But what's the 5th root of 32? It's 2. But now let's do something very similar to that, but let's do it with a negative exponent. So in other words, let's give us, say, something like 64 to the negative 1/3 power. Well, do you remember what a negative exponent does? It never makes the number negative. What it does is it flips it upside down or puts it in the denominator of a fraction raised to the 1/3 power. Now the 1/3 power is positive, but again, remember that 1/3 power means I'm taking the 3rd root of 64, which is 1/4, because the negative made it a fraction. The 3rd root made it 4, and so it becomes 1/4. Now, be very, very careful with all your signs and minus signs. In other words, you could have something like a 64 to the negative 3/2 power. This is perfectly fine, because what we're going to do is we're going to make it a fraction. We're going to take the denominators of 2, so we're going to take the square root of 64, which we're going to raise to the 3rd power. Well, that's 1 over square root of 64 is 8. 8 raised to the 3rd power. Well, that's a pretty big number, so I don't mind you grabbing your calculator and going 8 cubed and getting 512. So we got 1 over 512. But now, is it all right if I have a negative 64 to the negative 5/6 power? Now whoops, you can't see that. Let me scroll up. There we go. And I actually worded that wrong. It's a minus 64, not a negative. Remember, if the negative is not in parentheses, this is completely different than this. This one, we couldn't even do. This one would have no solution. If you tried to do it, what's going to happen is you're going to do 1 over the 6th root of negative 64, but there is no 6th root of a negative number. Then we're going to raise that to the 5th power. So this is no real solution. But with this one's all right, because we can actually leave the negative in front, do 1 over the 6th root of positive 64, and then raise that to the 5th power. Well, the 6th root of 64 is 2. 2 raised to the 5th power would be a negative 1 over 32. So, whoops, you can't quite see that. There we go, negative 1 over 32. So again, that negative, since it wasn't in parentheses, just sat out front. I could take the 6th root of 64. But the main part of the lesson is remembering that that negative exponent flips it and makes it a fraction. Again, if you have any questions, please bring them to class.